Brittney Griner is playing a game, and this is what Brittney Griner calls. I was not going to comment on any of this stuff until this took place. Watch what she says. The entire internet has reacted to this. Here's Brittney Griner. They're playing against the Indiana Fever, and look what she's saying. Go ahead, Rob.
Or the ticky-tack fouls that we were talking about earlier.
Patrick Bet-David just unleashed absolute fire on Brittney Griner, and the internet is going completely insane. The Valuetainment founder didn't hold back one bit when he saw that viral video of Griner's comments about Caitlin Clark.
The ticky-tack fouls that we were talking about earlier today.
What he said. Next has everyone talking, and Griner probably wishes she never stepped foot on that court. Do you think Patrick Bet-David was too harsh on Brittney Griner, or did she deserve every word of that brutal takedown?
Well, that pretty much sounds like trash effing white girl.
Yeah.
I mean, let's just be honest.
So the whole market reacts to this with
Folks, Patrick Bet-David just delivered one of the most savage takedowns in sports media history, and Brittney Griner is probably still picking her jaw up off the floor. The successful entrepreneur and media mogul absolutely destroyed Griner after that viral video surfaced and he didn't pull any punches. This wasn't just criticism. This was a complete demolition job that exposed everything wrong with the WNBA's current culture. Let's start with what set PBD off in the first place. The whole controversy began with what seemed like a simple basketball play between Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese. But as Bet-David pointed out, it quickly spiraled into something much bigger and more ridiculous. Angel Reese pushed one of Clark's teammates. Clark fouled Reese in response. And then Reese pulled what PBD called one of these LeBron flops and hit the ground like she'd been shot by a sniper. But here's where things got really stupid, according to Bet-David. Instead of treating it like a normal basketball play, certain media personalities immediately jumped to make it about race. DeMarcus Cousins started talking about how Clark was being protected because she's white. Angel Reese started making inflammatory comments. And then, and this is where PBD really started getting fired up, Jamila Hill came out with one of the most ridiculous takes in sports history. Hill actually said that Angel Reese would end up being the Michael Jordan of the WNBA. Let that sink in for a moment. A player who shoots 22.7% from the field, which might be the worst shooting percentage in WNBA history, is somehow going to be compared to the greatest basketball player who ever lived. Patrick Bet-David couldn't believe what he was hearing. And honestly, neither could anyone else with functioning brain cells.
To being able to read the expressions of a person and know their intent, know their character, know their perspective. But he does understand hate, because I think he also understands the hate of self. When you look at the play, which is all we can speak to as professionals, all we can speak to as analysts, Angel Reese
But the stupidity didn't stop there. Ryan Clark, the ESPN commentator, decided to get involved by attacking RG3 for supporting Caitlin Clark. And here's where it gets absolutely insane. Clark actually said that RG3's opinion didn't matter because he's married to a white woman. Yes, you heard that right. A major sports commentator suggested that a black man's opinions about race don't count because of who he chose to marry. Patrick Bet-David was incredulous when he played that clip. He couldn't believe that someone would actually say something so backwards and divisive on national television. The fact that Ryan Clark thought a person's spouse determines their credibility on racial issues shows just how twisted the discourse has become around women's basketball. But all of that controversy was just the warm-up act for the main event. That's when the video surfaced of Brittney Griner after she fouled out against the Indiana Fever. The audio clearly shows her saying what sounds like trash effing white girl, and that's when Patrick Bet-David completely lost it. PBD didn't mince. Words about what he heard on that video. He said it pretty much sounds like trash effing white girl and called it exactly what it was, a racially charged comment from a player who should know better. But Bet-David wasn't done there. Oh no, he was just getting started. What really set PBD off was the hypocrisy and entitlement that Griner displayed. Here's a player who was literally traded for a Russian arms dealer, the so-called Merchant of Death. And this is how she shows her gratitude, by making racist comments about the player who's single-handedly saving the WNBA from irrelevance. Bet-David absolutely unloaded on this point. He reminded everyone that the United States government traded Victor Bout, one of the world's most dangerous arms dealers, to get Griner back from Russian detention. That's the level of commitment and sacrifice that was made for her freedom. And her response is to turn around and make inflammatory comments about an American teammate who's bringing unprecedented attention and revenue to their league.
Brittney Griner, what she said about the NBA. This is so funny how all this stuff works out, right? She says, this is from Brittney. Every time we play her, there's this commotion, like this loud rumbling from the stands. Turns out it's people, thousands of them, just sitting there, watching on purpose. It's very disruptive. It's called a freaking game that they pay you money to play. Don't play the game.
But Patrick Bet-David wasn't finished exposing the absurdity of Griner's behavior. He then shared some quotes that were supposedly from Griner complaining about having actual fans in the arena. According to these statements, Griner was frustrated that thousands of people were showing up to games and actually paying attention to what was happening on the court.
Brittney Griner voiced frustration in a recent interview, claiming that Caitlin Clark is ruining what used to make the WNBA great. Wait for this.
Empty stands?
Tom, let me just.
Go ahead, I'm so mad.
WNBA games used to be a chill, quiet place. You could bring your laptop and relax, maybe even get a little work done. But now it's like there's a large gathering of people watching us from the stands. Some of them are yelling crazy shit about what they're seeing, putting unfair pressure on us to score, like we're there for their entertainment, and that's pretty gross.
Well,
Are you
I act like this.
Okay.
Rob, can you verify that this is what she said on the mom and pop WNBA model? That she's sick of the and then she says the whole thing is toxic. I saw a guy with his daughter in the crowd, both of them yelling, couldn't hear what they were saying exactly, but it was either about my performance or some light racism.
The quotes were so ridiculous that they sounded like satire. Griner allegedly complained that WNBA games used to be a chill, quiet place where you could bring your laptop and relax, maybe even get a little work done. She supposedly said that having fans yelling and cheering was putting unfair pressure on us to score, like we're there for their entertainment. Now, these quotes turned out to be satirical, but Patrick Bet-David's reaction to them perfectly captured the entitled attitude that many WNBA players have displayed. The idea that professional athletes would complain about having fans who actually care about their sport is so backwards that it's almost unbelievable.
And I know Adam, I'm going to piggyback off of Adam because Adam's been saying this for a while, that this is why the WNBA is never, ever, ever going to work and never make money. And this is exactly what Caitlin Clark gets for bending the knee. Do you guys remember when she said, when we lost all respect for her, when she said, I want to say I've earned every single thing, but as a white person, there is privilege. And the more we can elevate black women, this is going to be a beautiful thing. That's when it was all over. And Angel Reese and Brittney Griner, they walk around like the league owes them something. Even Ryan Clark's attitude as if, bro, where's the victimhood? These are freaking millionaires. Like, what are you talking about? It's attitude, it's no humility, just entitlement, and that's not confidence.
But PBD used these quotes to make a broader point about the culture problem in the WNBA. He pointed out that instead of being grateful for the attention and revenue that Caitlin Clark has brought to their league, players like Griner and Angel Reese act like the league owes them something. They display what he called attitude and entitlement instead of the humility and professionalism that successful athletes need. Patrick Bet-David absolutely destroyed the victimhood mentality that pervades the WNBA. He pointed out that these are millionaire athletes who are complaining about racism and unfair treatment while playing in a league that loses tens of millions of dollars every year. They're being subsidized by the NBA, supported by corporate sponsors, and promoted by mainstream media, but somehow they're still victims. The Valuetainment founder was particularly brutal in his assessment of how this attitude is destroying the league's potential. He said the WNBA started underwater, and instead of fixing their problems, they're just poking more holes in the boat. That's exactly what's happening. They have a generational talent in Caitlin Clark who could elevate the entire sport, but they're too busy playing victim to capitalize on the opportunity. PBD also went after the broader media narrative that's protecting players like Griner and Reese while attacking Clark. He pointed out that Clark actually hurt herself by bending the knee and making statements about white privilege instead of just focusing on basketball. When Clark tried to appease her critics by talking about elevating black women, it didn't satisfy anyone. It just made her look weak. This is where Patrick Bet-David really showed his business acumen. He understands that successful organizations don't reward entitlement and victimhood. They reward results and professionalism. The WNBA has been doing the opposite, protecting players who can't perform while criticizing the one player who's actually moving the needle. The statistics that PBD referenced about Angel Reese really drive this point home. Here's a player who shoots 22.7% from the field, potentially the worst shooting percentage in WNBA history, but she's being protected and promoted while Caitlin Clark faces constant criticism. Reese shoots 43.8% on attempts within 5 feet of the basket, which means she can't even make layups consistently. Patrick Bet-David pointed out the absurdity of calling someone the Michael Jordan of anything when they can't even make shots from point-blank range. He noted that even Karl Anthony Towns, who's considered inconsistent in the NBA, would be insulted by the comparison to Angel Reese's performance level, but PBD's most devastating point was about the long-term consequences of this behavior. He predicted that when Caitlin Clark gets injured or takes time off, we'll see exactly how much the WNBA depends on her for viewership and revenue. The league's ratings and attendance will crater, proving that all their other stars combined can't generate the interest that Clark creates by herself. This prediction proved prescient when Clark was announced to be out for 2 weeks with an injury. Patrick Bet-David said, "Good, let's see what happens to viewership," because he knew it would expose how dependent the league is on their one legitimate star. The WNBA's other players can talk all they want about being underappreciated, but the market will show the truth about their actual value. Bet-David also made a fascinating comparison between Caitlin Clark and Jackie Robinson. He suggested that Clark might become the Jackie Robinson of the WNBA, not because she's breaking racial barriers, but because she's the first white superstar in a predominantly black league who's facing hostility from within her own sport. This comparison really highlights the irony of the situation. Jackie Robinson faced racism from outside baseball while bringing talent and excitement to the game. Caitlin Clark faces hostility from inside basketball while bringing unprecedented attention and revenue to women's sports. Both faced resistance for challenging the status quo, but both were undeniably good for their respective sports. Patrick Bet-David's analysis of the media's role in this controversy was particularly sharp. He pointed out how commentators like Ryan Clark and Jamili Hill are more interested in pushing racial narratives than actually analyzing basketballs. They're creating artificial controversies and manufacturing outrage instead of celebrating the incredible talent and competition that exists in women's basketball. PBD also highlighted the hypocrisy of the WNBA's business model. The league loses tens of millions of dollars every year and depends entirely on NBA subsidies to survive. Yet players like Griner complain about having fans show up and actually watch their games. It's like complaining that customers are ruining your business by wanting to buy your product. The Valuetainment founder's business background gives him a unique perspective on these issues. He understands that successful enterprises need to focus on what actually drives value, not what makes people feel good about themselves. The WNBA has been prioritizing feelings over results, and that's why they continue to struggle financially despite having legitimate talent. Patrick Bet-David also called out the broader cultural problems that are affecting professional sports. He noted that the NBA is facing similar issues with players like LeBron James, who are anti-cop, anti-American, and pro-China. When leagues prioritize political messaging over entertaining basketball, they lose audiences and revenue. This trend is particularly damaging because it alienates the exact audiences that these leagues need to grow. Families who want to watch basketball together don't want to be lectured about social justice. Casual fans who are looking for entertainment don't want to be told they're part of the problem. When sports becomes political theater, it stops being fun. PBD's criticism of Caitlin Clark's response to the controversy was also spot on. He pointed out that when Clark made statements about white privilege and elevating black women, she was trying to appease critics who were never going to be satisfied anyway. Instead of focusing on what made her special as a player, she got pulled into racial politics that had nothing to do with basketball. This strategic mistake cost Clark credibility with both sides of the debate. Her critics didn't give her credit for acknowledging privilege, and her supporters were disappointed that she felt the need to apologize for her success. It's a perfect example of how getting involved in racial politics rarely helps anyone, especially athletes who should be focused on their sport. The broader lesson from Patrick Bet-David's analysis is that merit should matter more than identity. In professional sports, the WNBA has a chance to build something special around genuinely talented players like Caitlin Clark, but they're squandering that opportunity by prioritizing racial narratives over basketball excellence. PBD's prediction about viewership during Clark's injury absence will be the ultimate test of his thesis. If the numbers crater when she's not playing, it will prove that the WNBA's other stars are significantly less valuable than they claim to be. If the league continues to ignore this reality, they'll continue to struggle financially while alienating the audiences they need most. Patrick Bet-David's takedown of Brittney Griner and the WNBA's dysfunction was brutal but necessary. Someone needed to call out the entitlement, hypocrisy, and self-destructive behavior that's preventing women's basketball from reaching its potential. PBD did exactly that, and the sports world is better for having heard his perspective. Patrick Bet-David just delivered the reality check that Brittney Griner and the entire WNBA desperately needed. His brutal analysis exposed the entitlement and hypocrisy that's destroying women's basketball from within. What did you think of PBD's savage takedown? Drop your thoughts below, smash that like button, and subscribe for more unfiltered sports commentary.